You are back. You are normal. This is Your Normal Podcast, and I'm your host, Blake Russell. It's been a little while since we did one of these episodes. I think last one I put out was end of March, so I appreciate everybody coming back and listening. I had a lot going on in the month of April. I am kind of balancing two jobs, and Sam and I had gone on vacation, and it took me a while to get back into the headspace to want to do one of these things. And I'm really happy we're here. And I couldn't think of a better person to be doing this with. He's a very dear friend of mine. On paper, we don't make a whole lot of sense to the people outside looking in. Courtney Sullivan is his name. Courtney, would you like to take this opportunity to introduce yourself?
Absolutely. Hello, boys, girls, ladies and gentlemen, whatever the right pronoun is. I am a won't say elderly, but I am vintage, old, vintage man, and I live with my old golden retriever on a farm north of nowhere in northeast Kansas, and I have more fun than somebody should be allowed to.
So yes, you live in where specifically in Kansas is it? Because I've been there. I went there last November.
It's about 20 miles north of Lawrence, Kansas,
Okay.
2 miles north of Oskaloosa, and I have 60 acres of rolling countryside and a 17-acre pasture with two of my sister's retired horses on it.
Yes, and the thing that I remember the most, of course, is Courtney is a lucky owner of what's called a swim spa. And for anybody that's listening, Courtney, can you tell people what the swim spa is all about?
So one of my biggest indulgences, particularly since being here, I've been looking into hot tubs for some time because they're just so decadent and relaxing. And I found a thing called an all-weather pool or a swim spa, and it's basically a hot tub on steroids. It's 7 feet by 14 feet, and it has seats with jets and stuff, but it's big enough to move around in and exercise. There's jets that you can swim or walk against. And so most of the time, to be honest, I float in it with some kind of adult beverage in the end of the day and think about how lucky I am. But it's heated.
I remember when we visited and we were having our adult libations and we were in the dark and it was cold out, so it had the heating component to it. I remember just thinking like, man, I could fast forward the next 30 years of my life so I can have one of these and like on this piece of land like this. Because that's the thing too. It's like you're overlooking like how many acres of land and you can see as far as you can see out into the.
Well, it's probably about, somewhere between a 3 and an 8 mile horizon.
Yeah.
And it's somewhat at a high point at the top of a hill, and so it has great vistas. And immediately in front there's some rolling hills into the pasture to the south. And so yeah, it's a wonderful place to sit and be peaceful and observe and listen to nature without very much intrusion from mankind.
Yeah, and you've only lived there you've lived there less than 2 years probably, right?
Yeah, it was a year in this last January, so
okay, going on a year and a half.
Yeah.
Okay. And where did you live before? Can you tell people a little bit about that kind of situation, where you came from?
So I had the great pleasure of living among extended family and friends in Southwest Michigan. And there were 4 households that had contiguous property, about 200 acres altogether. And we all heated with wood, very large social network of friends and acquaintances. But we worked together and we played together. And it was a wonderful place to live. And I met a lot of great people. And, somebody asked me once what I did, because I'm retired now. And I thought about it a little bit. And I said, well, I help people. I do things. I'm fairly industrious. I'm pretty curious about stuff. But I have the time and the interest to, help people with what they're involved with.
Mm-hmm.
There's hardly anything more fun than sharing something you have a passion about and igniting that passion with them, or at least making them comfortable that they can do things competently.
Mm-hmm.
So
That's been my general experience with you is like, you've showed me a few things, like we've shot some guns together and like you've shared that and you've taught me how to do that. And I'm not surprised so I asked everybody to create this list of 5 words to describe yourself. And you kind of mentioned some of them there. And I'm going to have you go over that. We're going to go through one by one. Before I do, I'm realizing that I haven't really made the connection between how you and I knew each other prior to this conversation. So for anybody that's listening, Courtney and I became friends probably what now, like 4 or 5 years ago? Maybe.
yeah, it's been a while. That may be 3, because I think my daughter was in her home when I first met you.
Yeah, that's correct. I met you at so his daughter is Aaron's, her name is Erin, and she is the wife of one of my very dear friends here in St. Louis. And I've been over the years, I've developed a friendship with Aaron as well. And I've known them probably for 4 or 5 years now. And then Courtney happened to be at their house at I think you were just in town visiting, maybe.
Some social gathering that was
Yeah.
going on, yeah, and you guys moved over.
So, and that's, I'm going to get into that whole story, and then it's going to kind of go into a lot of other conversations that we kind of have planned for this. Before I get into that, I want to go over your 5 words here. And
Okay.
when I read them, I just chuckled because I was like, these are perfect. Like, it's just the perfect compilation of words to describe you. And I even made like a note of a couple other ones that I would maybe identify you as, but I'll let you speak to these. So in no particular,
So you got some close runner-ups, huh?
some close runner-ups, man. You needed like 7, and that would have been the sweet spot. So in no particular order, you can talk as much or as little as you'd like about each of these, but I just kind of want it.
Be careful what you wish for.
Hey man, I got all day. It's Sunday. I don't got anything to do. So this first one here, let's just start with playful. Nice and easy. What are we talking about? Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I am substantially Irish, as you might guess, with a name like Courtney Sullivan. My father was 100% Irish, and so I'm only 50% Irish. But there's a certain amount of mischievousness and playfulness, I think, that's inherent in the background. And I know that I learned and inherited a fair bit of that from my father. I like to play. I am totally fascinated. I have a pretty good vocabulary. I like to write, but I am hugely entertained by plays on words and innuendo. And so I got all my little word jokes. If I were an animal, I would probably be an otter, because
it's my favorite animal.
They're sleek and playful, and there's just so many times when I'll do things even when I ought to know better.
Come on, man.
Touche. But so the images of theater are the 2 faces of tragedy and comedy, and they say for people that feel life is a tragedy, and for people that think life is a comedy, or the other way around. I don't remember, but my point is, you can either laugh or cry, and I choose to laugh. And life's hugely entertaining, and despite the fact that life is hard, the baseline for life is pretty tough. And if you don't approach it well, then you just get bitter. And so you approach it as well as you can, and you laugh, and you have values that let you move forward and endure the hardship of life by making it better for yourself and others. And laughter is a great way to do that.
Yeah, and you're just speaking to like the more time that goes on, the more susceptible we are to pain and suffering. And you just look at it like, I have control in how I respond to this, and you choose to do it with whatever you want to call it.
No. I think it's a baseline. It's like starts right off the bat, and you can experience tragedy and hardship at an extremely early age.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and
A lot of people do. Yeah.
Fortunately, yeah, it's a lot of people do. Most people don't, and we are fortunate enough to live in a culture, in a society, in a place and time where life is amazingly good, and there's lots of other people on the planet that don't enjoy the ability to have good, fulfilling lives, because when you're working every day to figure out what your next meal is going to be, um, it's a lot harder struggle.
Yeah, I'm happy you said that, because I was gonna make sure I like made a blurb, or I mentioned something that, like, even if you don't have this outlook that you have, which is like, I'm gonna try to approach this, to quote you, like you said, that life can be a comedy, and you're thinking about life as a glass half full approach. Some people, like you just said, like their set of circumstances has led them to not be able to like really have a choice in the matter. Like you just said, like they're just trying to make ends meet every single day.
So just so I'm clear, life is a tragedy. You know, it's you don't get out alive, and you will experience hardship. And even the most fortunate of us will, will have challenging things happen to us. And some people have extraordinarily challenging existences. Comedy is what lets you make that more bearable and give you the perspective to have the strength to, despite any circumstances, to move forward and be better from it, so that you as a person or other people that you come into contact with might be improved.
Yeah. And before we get on here, we were talking, Courtney's growing pumpkins, and you can talk about that later if you want, but he's growing pumpkins, and he was talking about, he sounded almost hopeful. Maybe I'm finding too much meaning in what you were saying, but you sounded hopeful that you have a surplus of pumpkins because you would like the opportunity to like go down to some local churches and provide kids with the opportunity to come and pick their own pumpkins around.
Sure.
And that just speaks to kind of the person you are. And, I just think you're a really kind person.
Well, why not?
Yeah.
Life is tough. I think the Dalai Lama said, lead with kindness whenever possible. And the second part of that statement is, it is always possible.
I've never heard that. Can you say it again?
Lead with with kindness whenever possible. It is always possible.
It's just letting you know, like, you have power over like your actions, basically. Even no matter the set of circumstances, you can always try to be positive. And I like that. Let's go. We got a lot to cover here, Courtney. So let's try this next word. And here's the thing for anybody that's listening, we're gonna go on so many tangents, and I'm gonna have to bring us back because that's just what Courtney and I do. So bear with us here. So this next word, let's go with inquisitive.
I am fascinated by stuff, people, things. I studied some psychology and sociology. I think in a different lifetime had made an interesting engineer. So I think I said at one point that one of the attributes that I have is I am fascinated by and want to understand the physics and dynamics of how complex things work, and then learn how to operate them optimally. So whether it's a car engine or a heating and cooling system or ballistics or image capture and reproduction, as in like photography or cinematography, there's just so many things, and like a lot of things, it looks simple and somebody else does it. And then you get into it and you go, oh, there's just so many layers here I just couldn't appreciate. So peeling those and metallurgy, welding and shaping, forging, there's just so many endeavors that are fascinating and they're fun, and you can over your lifetime play with different parts of them. And I don't have to be the best. Sometimes I'm maybe even only mediocre, but as long as I'm competent and enjoy it, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So it's like, well, I can't do everything at once, but I can probably do almost anything if I focus on it, work at it long enough.
That makes me, I thought about a lot of things when you were saying that. And I want to ask you a question. It might seem like a weird question, but have you at any point in your life because you were just describing like your interests and like what you want to give time to and effort, it kind of jumps around a lot for you, which makes sense because we're people and like we don't want to just do one thing all the time. I personally have found myself feeling frustrated, like knowing I don't have enough time to really give like my all to a lot of different things that I'm interested in. Have you ever felt that same frustration that it's like, I don't have enough time to do all the things
For
that I
sure.
want to do?
Absolutely. I mean, it's part of life,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes you have to parse it out, and it's a slow roll. It doesn't unfold at once. When I got married and had children and had houses and stuff, I learned back then by reading books about plumbing and electrical stuff because I wanted to be able to do things and be proficient. I didn't want to have a dripping faucet be a source of irritation that was like subliminal almost, where I've seen people where they'll just ignore it like it's not there, but it's irritating to them. They don't want to pay a plumber $100 or $200 to fix something that they know is not that complex, but they don't feel like they can dive into it and master it. And so I don't want to be that way, but it doesn't happen all at once.
Right.
And I have the luxury now, being comfortable, being retired, having time where, I can say, well, I want to poke around at that. So acquire some elements of it and start doing some things. And usually it's pretty rough, but if I like it, I'll pursue it and practice it enough to where, it might be, more than just adequate. Maybe it's actually, I'm part of the interest in the metallurgy and the welding and forging is I have this idea. I want to make some artwork stuff. I live in Kansas. And so some stuff that moves in the wind, and be that, weird old guy on the hill that's got all the stuff in his yard that's flopping around when the wind blows. It's like, it's okay.
There's some Aaron in that, or there's some you and Aaron, because she likes the trinkets and stuff in her yard that I've seen too. So it's funny that I was able to make that connection just now. Yeah, I don't know. Have you ever heard of it's Sylvia Plath's The Bell Jar? That's what always comes to mind in this kind of conversation. Have you ever heard of this?
I'm not familiar.
Yeah, I'm going to paraphrase the passage because I don't memorize. I'm pulling this, but it's basically like this person's laying under a fig tree, and they're talking about all the branches of the fig tree represents something that they want to be in life. It's a husband, it's a plumber, it's a musician. There's all these possibilities, and they're just staring up at it, looking at it, and they want to be all of them, but they're being so indecisive that the figs and the branches start to fall off the tree, and then it ends with like they just shrivel up at my feet. And that's the thing. It's just at some point you gotta, like, the society that we live in, we have to like pick a route, and you have to
No, not the society we live in. That is life. That has existed through, for the last 10,000 years.
Yeah, well, I reject it. No.
You make choices based on priorities, and those choices lead you in a path, and sometimes it's self-directed and sometimes it's circumstantial. And the path you take is at the expense of every one that you didn't.
Mm-hmm.
And so you wind up over here, and you can look and say, there are other paths that I might have enjoyed, or I could have chosen, but I didn't. And it doesn't mean that they're forever lost to you, because you may be able to do things as an avocation as opposed to a vocation.
Mm.
And so if you're lucky and you live long enough and you work hard and are successful, it may give you the time and resources to pursue some of those other things that weren't part of the core journey.
I have a question for you. And maybe you'll have an answer, maybe you won't, but I'm going to ask it anyway. So I think what we're talking about, I think for a lot of people, like having to choose and like having all these interests and possibilities and then having to choose, I think it provides people with some distress. Like I think it can give people some anxiety and like a lot of indecisiveness, and it can, so like, do you have anything tangible or anything that you can speak to for you that you were able to like pick a route, or like,
Sure.
I mean, how did that work for you? Was it an easy decision for you? Like, just speak to
No,
that a little bit.
I always worked in school because uh, I wanted money to spend things on, that I wouldn't ask anybody to give me money to waste the way I wanted to waste it. And then when I got out of school, it's like, well, I got to work for a living now.
Mhm.
And I wanted to live on my own. I wanted to have the freedom, to have a vehicle and to do things. And so it was always a means to an end. And so it's like, okay, well, here's some choices that I could do. I could kind of want to work here, and part of it is, where you get a job.
Mm.
And you do that, and you say, okay, you know, is the work environment okay enough that I can tolerate it, or maybe even thrive? Is the nature of the work something that I can do well and be successful at? Because I got to do it for a while, something for a while. And then once I've done that for a while, then I've got some time and I can explore doing something else if I want. Um, and you assume responsibilities, because bearing responsibility is the core of meaning in life. And so you get married and you have children, and then it's like, well, I've got to have some kind of stability. Continuity of income is wonderful. Um, Minimizing the uncertainty, and so you make choices, and you try and do things so that you're in a position that it's not just survival mode all the time.
Mhm.
And so you try things. What's the worst thing that can happen? You make a bad choice, you get into some kind of crappy situation, you fail. Okay, you try something else. You're
Yeah,
not dead.
I know. But there's like so many people in our population that like the not knowing, and like what you just said, I tend to agree with it. Like you try something, it doesn't really work out. Okay, like you learn some things along the way and then you pivot.
So here it is. Here it is. You have to have a certain blind faith in yourself that you are going to be able to find things and do good, and be able to be successful. And it kind of like, well, there's nothing I can't do. There's lots of things that I might want to do more than others, and I have to find balances among all those things. But you just have to believe that there's a reason that you're here, and that you are walking around on the earth, and you're going to go forward and survive and find reasons. And you may never know some of them, you know,
Do
you
you
know,
do you
to
know
say quote Jackson Brown, somewhere between the time you come and the time you go, there may be a reason that you're alive that you may never know.
mm, yeah, and it can be minute, it can be significant, it could just be to affect it could be a lot of things, and it's also like kind of up to the individual to like make meaning within that. Like to it's on there's some, to me at least, there's some semblance of like the individual person should be able to make meaning out of whatever it is what you're talking about. Like their purpose or whatever you want to call it.
And uncertainty is a certain steady state.
Mm-hmm.
So, suck it up.
Yeah.
How long are you going to live?
You're right.
How long are you going to be healthy?
Mm-hmm.
How everything changes, and human nature is given to want to see things as staying the way they are, even in the face of impending change. But things change. And so you have to just accept the fact that things are going to change, and uncertainty is a way of life. And there's an Irish saying that says, if you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans.
Yeah.
So there always is going to be uncertainty. Don't stop that from going forth.
It's tough. It's just tough for a lot of people. And but I mostly agree with what you're saying. Like it can be
paralyzing. It can be paralyzing.
Yeah, but it could
People
also
can
be
have
like if you it's your thoughts and your behavior, right? I come from like a psychological like therapy sense. Like what you're talking about is like if you just allow your behavior to like do things, then it'll eventually like change your thoughts about it, or it'll reaffirm your thoughts. And then if it didn't work out, then you pivot and you change your behavior. But some people, instead of like committing to a behavior, they just do nothing. They let their thoughts overpower them, and then they just kind of sit, and they're not able to like make a
Go in
decision.
that thing I sent you.
Huh?
That thing I sent you, that map.
Yeah.
There was a question in there that basically said, have you ever worked in a business culture that, didn't really fit your values or whatever? And I gave you the whole thing about, the Sioux Dakota Indians, when they found they were riding a dead horse, dismounted and found another horse.
Mm-hmm.
And in business, they tend to do all kinds of other ridiculous things, like, put some kind of group together to study whether or not, dead horses can be ridden successfully, or change riders. Or so that was my parody of, yeah, you can go into all kinds of denial and
What if?
fail to see realities that exist because you don't want to perceive that reality.
Yeah, it's a constant it's a constant battle with reality and what you expect or you desire for reality to be. And like it takes a certain willpower really to have control of your thoughts, to have an acceptance of what reality is.
Well, there's damn little that you have control of
it's very minimal.
and what you think and how you feel and how you choose to behave are one of the few things.
That's it. That's pretty much it. Okay, so Courtney, we're through 2 of the 5 words right now.
It's all right. It'll be dark when we're done.
All right, let's do a joint one right here. Okay, let's do 2 in 1. So reflective and grateful. Speak a little bit to what we're talking about there.
Well, they're related.
Yeah.
I am reflective, not so much that I'm driving using the rear view mirror, but a lot of things that happen, if you don't learn from and extract that knowledge about how you can make better choices or deal with situations better in the future, you never get past some, they can be highly traumatic events, but you need to be able to reflect on where you've been and what you've done and what's happened and what's to be learned from that. You don't dwell on it, but you have to stop regularly and consider those things, especially in the context of, what am I doing now? What are the choices I'm making? What are the directions I want to go? And what are the relationships I want to have? And so I have found that it's been useful, and hopefully how I choose to live my life is better from having done that. And I recognize that, I am blessed beyond my wildest imagination that I have lived as long and had the experiences I've had and known the people that I've known and know, and um, am able to enjoy and observe the beauty and wonder of nature. It's life is good, and mine has been extraordinarily good, and I cannot tell you how grateful it makes me.
Yeah, it's I appreciate you sharing that with me. Number one, I'm happy that you're in such a content place right now, friend to friend. I that made me feel good inside to know that. Um, but also like I find myself very like I feel kind of jealous that you're at this point, like you're in retirement and you have all this land and you're able to kind of just help people on any given day. And like I think I personally would choose a different geographical location to set up shop, but like just generally speaking, what you're doing right now, I find uh I can't think of the word. Like I want to
Like,
do it. Like I'm looking
like,
forward to that.
okay, so like you said, I'm frustrated because there's so many things I want to do and there's so little time,
Yeah.
and so it doesn't happen overnight.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm in my 66th year of walking around on this little blue planet, and it was, a lot of hard work, a lot of dumb luck, a lot of wonderfully generous and caring people, and um, I didn't expect to live this long or be this happy.
Yeah. I'm happy to hear it. And I'd like to think you have a little bit longer here, Courtney. Okay.
Well, I do too.
Don't be going anywhere, man.
Another day or two, at least finish the interview.
Yeah, like we gotta hurry up. All right, let's knock out this last word. I think there's going to be some
Okay.
overlap, but if you have other thoughts, that'd be just fine. But industrious, what were we thinking about when we wrote that word?
Left to my own devices, I tend to be fairly organized, fairly tidy. Um, I like to keep busy, you know, tends to keep me out of trouble as much. And because there is so many things that need to be done and so many things that I want to do, I always have lists. I have lists of lists. And so it's like there's everything from grocery lists to chores to stuff I want to poke around at. So I need to get some stuff or some things maybe, or just time to go do them. Um, so uh, I've had people that I've met, and when they get to know me, and they're kind of like, you know, do you always stay so busy? You always, or I won't see him for a while, and I'll see him, and we'll be talking about what's been going on, and after a while, they'll go, holy shit, look at all this stuff you've been poking around at. It's like, it doesn't seem like a lot to me because I'm just, and so don't get me wrong, I'm lazy, and I'm lazy enough to relax. I'm not just so ambitious that I'm just wear myself to a frazzle every day. And one of the nice things about being where I am is I have the luxury of having that ebb and flow. I don't have to flog myself 12-hour days, but I tend to kind of look at it kind of like work. I need to put in time doing things that need to be done before it's quitting time, or Miller time or whatever.
Yeah.
So it's a balance, and it just helps me. It helps me stay healthier, helps me strike good balances across a lot of different things. And I perceive that that's perceived as industriousness.
No, I mean those are the things I thought of when I read it. And I don't know the science behind what you're talking about, but I think with what you're talking about and like staying busy, like obviously that's going to be good for the body, so physically, and that keeps your mental sharp. And I think the longer that you feel motivated, and the more you should keep doing that. I mean, why the hell not? Why the hell
You
not?
don't wind up with stuff piled up or overgrown or disorganized.
Yeah, and I I want to speak to the last word I would have added for you, and we've already mentioned it once, kind of.
Mhm.
I would have put kind. Uh,
Oh,
I would have
thank
put
you.
kind. Yeah, no, I think you're one of the kindest people I've ever met, and this is gonna kind of flow into the next topic of how we met and like my perceptions and all that kind of shit. But I thought of like when I was thinking about your kindness, a good representation, and even like you're gentle, like your voice is gentle. And I thought of this story with Sam, and I asked for her blessing to tell it. But we were at Rainy and Aaron's, and we had all been hanging out, and we were enjoying some adult beverages throughout the day. And Sam and
Oh,
I
you
needed,
guys were toast.
so Sam and I needed to leave, and I think I had ordered a cab or something, an Uber, and I couldn't get Sam to wake up. I was like, Sam, come on,
Right,
Sam,
right,
come on.
right.
And then Courtney just very calmly is like, I got this, and walks over, and he starts like very gently kind of rubbing her back. And then Sam described it as like it felt like a fatherly figure or something. He just very calmly started, Sam, honey, wake up. We gotta go. And within seconds, it's like you summoned her from the dead, and she got up, and something I had been trying for 10 minutes just instantly. But I think it's just because of it's just your general presentation. You have a kind nature and feeling to you, and it's what you exude in the world. And I just wanted to add that. I know you didn't put it, but
I try to respond rather than react,
mhm.
and I find that that helps a lot in my approach,
Mhm.
and it definitely allows me to be kind even when that's just shutting up.
Yeah, just kind of like keeping your thoughts to yourself. Is that what you mean?
Mhm.
Yeah, there's some wisdom in that, and just being like, okay, and just like not providing your input.
If you perceive that it's not being sought or welcome,
Mm,
then yeah, then
yeah,
yeah, time and place.
I hear that. I hear that, and I think that I think that we don't have. I don't think there's much more we need to elaborate on that, but I think that's important for people to hear too. Like sometimes just shut up, like just like let it go or whatever. However you want to perceive that.
I don't feel ill will towards many people.
Hmm.
Uh, there is true evil in this world, but it's fairly rare. There's a lot of misguided souls, and so uh, I wish them well and will avoid them to the greatest extent possible.
Hmm.
So
All right, so I think here, Courtney, I think we should get into the interview now. What do you say?
perfect,
uh,
outstanding.
all right, so I want to check out my time here. 30, 45 minutes is what we're working with here. Okay.
Okay,
So, um, I want to talk about, I know I generally talked about where I met you and stuff, but I want to give you my perception of meeting you, and then we can kind of talk about
bring
that.
it on.
So I think I mentioned at the beginning of the interview that on paper, Courtney and my relationship outside looking in shouldn't make sense. And I'm aware that the word should or should be a word that we eradicate from our vocabulary because it's coming from a judgmental place. But when I first met Courtney, it was in the backyard of my friend Randy's and Aaron's house, and I came there. And Courtney, you were. I remember I remember very vividly. You had an NRA cap on. You had a hat.
Oh, okay,
You had a
okay.
hat. Yeah, you had a hat that said NRA. And this was, we were saying 3, 4 years ago. And I think I've evolved. I mean, I like to think I've evolved into a person that's more willing to accept other viewpoints. But I think at that time I was very like, fuck guns, fuck the NRA. And like, I think I had this preconceived notion of like, I don't like this person just from you wearing a hat. And then as the day progressed, we were playing bags and like tossing bags, and we were on the same side, and we started chatting. And um, you had asked me, I I want to actually bridge the gap here. Throughout the day and getting to know you, I was like, this person's wonderful, just like I've been talking about this whole time. But after like we had gotten to know each other and stuff, I think you had made some kind of comment asking me like, or I think you made an assumption that like I would lean like social, at least socially, with a liberal viewpoint.
Mhm.
And I asked you, I was like, well, why do you, I was like, why do you have that assumption? And then it just opened up this whole can of worms, and the rest is history. But I mean, I don't know if I've ever told you anything that I just told you, but like, do you have anything to offer in meeting me, or like, do you have any thoughts about what I just said?
So I don't think that I very often choose to do that. I was probably going through a phase where I was pissed off about something that was going on, and it's like, all right, I'm going to wear my flag. and,
Yeah.
and for the record, the NRA has lost its way. Uh, I they used to, like a lot of organizations, had more value, and I think that's dramatically waned.
Mhm.
Um, and I don't know,
And
maybe it
Courtney,
was.
sorry, Courtney. I don't mean to cut you off there, but I just want to say we're gonna have a segment here in a minute where we're gonna talk about guns and stuff.
Yep,
I don't
yep,
want to. I don't want it to be
right,
have
right,
the
right.
picture. Okay. Okay.
Uh, so I don't know if I perceived, this scowl when you looked at my head or not. I don't think I did. So,
Right.
so my thought is, and I'm stealing this because I read, and
Uh huh.
I'm hugely curious about people and their perceptions. But I recently heard an idea that resonated with me, and it is my thought is everybody knows something I don't know, and quite likely knows something I need to know. And
Mm-hmm.
so I'm always fascinated about who people are and what do they think, and why do they think that way. And it's much more entertaining to have a discussion with somebody that has different perceptions, because I can learn something.
For sure.
If you think and believe exactly the same things I do, well, then it's like, okay, so is it gonna rain tomorrow?
Right.
um,
Nothing would happen. Yeah.
so you were I remember that you were funny, easy to laugh, articulate. um, I sense that you were well thought, in terms of you thought about things, so maybe reflective or curious.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, there was a comfortable affinity that we enjoyed. Uh, and it's like, well, it doesn't matter, whether I think this or believe that, and you think this or believe that. Uh, it's curious to find out. So
Sure.
we were able to have a dialogue, and you know, from that initial acquaintance, we've had lots of fascinating discussions. And one of the things I dearly like about you and respect tremendously is that we can talk. I remember asking questions and listening to your answers. And then at some point, you would entertain me asking you, what about this? Have you considered this? I see this as uh, a factor, or uh, something that's an element of this discussion or this topic that uh, I don't know if you've considered.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's that back and forth dialogue that I think we both enjoy, and has been insightful on a number of occasions.
I do thoroughly enjoy it, and I think the majority of the time we get together with groups of people, the night typically ends with like us like with a drink in our hand talking until the wee hours of the morning, and I really enjoy it. And I was knowing this interview is coming up, I found myself kind of thinking about that a few days ago, and I kind of got into this, I don't want to call it negative headspace, but I was thinking like those interactions are like becoming like few and far between. Like I feel like they're going to be happening couple 2-3 times a year at best, and I was like, man, that really sucks. Like I wish it could happen more, because I crave that.
We could interview more often if you want.
Let's do it, man. Like once a month. Courtney's gonna be a regular guest, and no.
We can do a whole series, and people will be going, what pitiful stuff. But
Sure. Yeah, who are these guys? No, I have this written down in a different order, but I think it makes more sense to just go right into this topic. I want to talk about, because I mentioned the NRA hat, and you mentioned like the NRA like
Yeah.
kind of losing its way. I usually write a bunch of notes for this section. I just put guns, and that's all I have written. I just thought we could kind of open ended talk about it. I I tend to I don't really know how I feel about it. I don't think that we can legislate. I don't think we can legislate.
Behavior.
Yeah,
You
it's
can't
and
legislate good behavior.
I'm really
You can't
conflicted about it.
legislate morality.
I'm really conflicted about it because there's obviously something going on. There's obviously hopefully an identifiable problem, and I think it has a lot to, I mean, it is behavior, it is mental health, but for any behavior, there has to be a reason for that behavior. And I don't
Mhm.
know if there's enough, I don't know if there's if we need to fund research into this more, or I don't know what it needs to be. But I tend to think like in the meantime, until we can identify what this problem is, I think that some efforts could be made to try to do some damage control or limit it. And that's where I do think some legislation could come into play. And I think I don't want to put words in your mouth, and I'll let you kind of speak to this, but I
So,
think
so,
that's
so, so let's back up a little bit because
okay.
uh, you threw out a noun for an object, tools. I tend to think of as guns as tools.
Uh-huh.
So they're useful tools. They can be powerful tools. I mean, I have tractors and chainsaws, and all of those are powerful tools, and they can be hugely damaging if they're used recklessly or carelessly or maliciously.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think that they too often are tools of violence. Um, but I'm a little bit jaded because I sense that there are other issues that aren't being addressed. So saying, okay, if magically we could say there are no guns, no one has gun, would it stop suicide?
No,
Would it stop violence?
it would
Would
not
it
stop
stop?
violence. No.
So for millennia, you know, people have inflicted horrific injury and pain on other people. I mean, up until the last few hundred years, slavery was how civilizations operated.
Mm-hmm.
You conquered your enemy, you took them as slaves, and they did your work.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that was how mankind existed for the last
It's
8,000 years.
inconceivable. It's inconceivable, but that you're right. Objectively, that is true. Yes.
So I tend to look at things and say, all right, what's the order of magnitude? Right?
Mm-hmm.
How many people are killed by guns, and who are those people? And the
Doing the
fact of the
killing, or the
matter
people
is,
that are I'm sorry, I want to make the distinction. Are you saying who are the people that are doing the killing, or the people that are getting killed?
well, both, but mostly the people doing the killing.
Okay.
You
Men,
know,
men typically.
oh yeah.
Yeah.
So I could get into all kinds of numbers and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the incidence of suicide in the United States is lower than the incidence in Japan.
Mm-hmm.
And
I didn't know
in
that.
Japan, in Japan, oh, it's several times, 2 or 3 times higher per capita. And it's not by guns, because they don't have guns. People still find ways to end their existence.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of violence, it's and I don't want to say incidental. On average, 300 people a year are killed in the United States with rifles. All rifles, hunting rifles, ARs, assault rifles. So something under 300 is the deadly assault rifles, and every one of those is tragic.
Mm-hmm.
But that includes all of them that are killed in the quote unquote mass shootings. So if we got rid of all the rifles, 300 people might live each year. That's, okay. How do people die? Are there not other things, other behaviors that we can try and influence that would save more lives? I mean, we have the technology where when you get in your car and it goes over 5 miles an hour, the thing turns off. And unless there's an emergency coming in or out, why don't we do that? It's money. There's what, 6,000 people minimum a year that are killed by distracted texting and driving. It's a lot bigger number. We have the capacity and the way to. So part of, and I fully acknowledge, I have been a lifelong participant in various shooting sports at times in my life, and I enjoy the challenge of mastering that skill. I do lots.
You're a great
of
shot.
other,
Phenomenal shot.
I do lots of other things, but it's been, an element, something that I've enjoyed. I think that the attempts to say, well, we're going to try and control people who are willing to be honest and legal. It's like saying we're gonna end drunk driving by taking the cars from all the sober people, or we're gonna end obesity by getting rid of forks. So yes, absolutely. Are there bad things that happen? Are there things that can be done to help minimize it and identify people that could be risks? Should they be at the expense of, fairness and due process? Probably not. I am open to discussion, but to say this is the most critical thing that we have to do as a society is just utter bullshit.
Yeah.
And I there's what, 47 or 49 million Black people in the United States, and to say the biggest risk to those 49 million people is being killed by a policeman. And granted, there's several hundreds, I think, a year. It might be 400 or 500, but is that the single biggest risk to that population? Nah. Does stuff need to change? Are there things that are done that are unfair and discriminatory and racist that don't result in somebody dying? Damn straight there are.
Yeah.
But so I object to politicizing and grandstanding and politicians acting like this is going to make a difference when the reality is it won't. Let's find things that we can do that will actually make life better for more people.
So I'm gonna interject. So
sure,
I want to stick to guns, but you mentioned like the thing that's like very prominent in our culture right now and like on the news and very much in the media with Black people being killed by police. And you equated it to like Black people and people in general can die.
Now everything's racist.
No, I know, and
soap is racist,
and that's not where I'm. That's not where I'm going.
It's racist.
That's not where I'm going with this. It's like,
I know, I'm teasing.
Yeah.
And I don't mean to be disrespectful. It's just I warned you. I laugh. I make fun of things, and I don't mean it disrespectful or that they're not important issues. I
think with I want to stick to guns, but I just want to make this comment about that. Like, I think I understand when you think about, how do I say this? So I can understand, like, statistically speaking, we're thinking about all the ways that we can die, right? There's far superior ways that somebody could die than being killed by the police. I recognize that, but I feel like highlighting that when like this thing that's happening that objectively seems as though it's like disproportionately affecting a certain set of people, I just think it's like, I think it does a disservice because it feels like it's like discrediting what somebody's saying they're going through. because I understand, like, objectively, when we're looking at numbers, yeah, they could walk down the street and an asteroid could hit them in the head or like whatever it is. But I feel like we
Right,
have
right.
um but I want to
I'm not discounting
uh-huh.
uh, how groups are treated, so I tend to think about it more as at an individual level
Hmm.
rather than some kind of group identity.
Right.
The fact that you are a particular race or religion or from a particular country doesn't tell me shit about you, much less everything I need to know.
Hmm. Right.
So whether it's police, white people, black people, Muslims, Jews, I am probably one of the least biased people that you'll ever know because I dislike everybody equally.
For sure. And I think that everybody should, on some level, should try
So
to
you
get
heard what I said.
uh-huh.
I dislike everybody equally. It's a sense of humor that I have. It's a little bit dry, but
I understand. You're saying like you give everybody the benefit of the doubt, or like you know that everybody has their flaws, and like you try
they're
to get
people. They're people.
yeah, no, and I agree with you that you should try to get to know everybody on an individual level, but I also think that there's systems at play that affect groups of people, whether we like that
Absolutely.
or not, that can
Absolutely.
shape people's life direction. It can shape a lot of things. So
So if I said, realistically, there's 2 or 3% of our population of 330 million, and they commit over half of the homicides, over half of the murders is committed by a really small group that's identifiable. It's like, okay, well, maybe we should focus on what's going on in the dynamics of that segment of the population
mhm,
and uh, and say, okay, that's really disproportionate.
mhm,
Why is that? What can we do to help influence that?
mhm.
But
So
you don't hear that discussion
I know there are.
because
I agree with
it's
you.
gonna
There's
it's
things.
gonna it's not it's ugly. It's ugly.
Mhm. And I agree with you. And we talked about this before we started. Like, and I don't want to. I want to get back to guns here in a second,
Okay.
but I want to speak to like the general sense to politicizing politicians today in America, and like we obviously on a lot of issues, maybe not all, we kind of come from different sides of the aisle, but
Hmm.
we're both like communicating and recognizing that like we're losing faith in the systems that be like we're losing faith in our
Absolutely.
politicians. We're nothing. It just feels like a facade to me now, and I just don't have any faith in that they're representing the common people. I don't think that that's happening anymore. I think that you at least somewhat agree to what I'm saying.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Um.
It makes me more, even more interested in being self-sufficient,
Mhm.
where I can take care of myself and help other people in ways, so when things are normal, you don't need so much. And when things get crazy, you may not be able to count on the grocery store being open or the lights being on or the police to be there in minutes.
Mhm.
So as that relates to guns, I mean, it's the same reason, I did, I have a spare tire in my car. I don't know that I've ever had, well, I have, I can think of a couple times, but my point is I don't take the spare tire out because I'm unlikely to need it.
Mhm.
It's one of those things I hope I never have to use.
Right. On that with guns in that way, like I think they're just fine. Like I agree with the right to bear arms. I agree with the right to hunt and sport and do all those things. But it's when you look at it like I'm gonna paraphrase kind of how you were talking about it, and I'm not trying.
Mhm.
I'm not doing it to like dumb down what you said, but like
No, no, no.
when you
Go ahead.
when you're looking at it as just an object or a tool outside of like the destruction that it can do, I think you equated it to a fork or a car. my thought when you were saying that, like, I understand what you're saying. Like, it makes sense. Like, the gun's not going to march down the street and start shooting people. Somebody's going to be behind the gun. I get that. But my frustration is, like, with a car, for example, like, people invented cars, and then people started driving cars, and then people started getting in wrecks. And then they're like, how can we make this better? How can we change this? And then they started putting seatbelts in the car, and they started like making the roads differently. And they started doing a lot. They started like they learned over time, like, okay, the people driving the car are the problem, but like we can make this a little better. So my thought about that is, yes, the gun itself is not doing it, but I think that there's things, and I'm not in a position of power or in a position to dictate what happens, and I don't even really have an opinion on what I would want to happen. But I think that we can, until we get to this identifiable problem, which is somewhere in the realm of mental health and how is this
Yes.
caused, and
Yes.
I think that we can start chipping away at this. And I feel like, for you, I want to ask you this question. I want to ask you two questions.
Okay.
So I recognize that through this whole like COVID situation, I think people have lost faith in the CDC a lot, for whatever reasons. But I also know that the CDC is not.
They've struggled. Yeah.
Yeah, and I know also though that the CDC isn't even allowed to study gun violence. Like, the NRA has so much money wrapped up in it that they won't even let it be studied. So my first question is, do you think it should be studied so we can make better informed decisions about it? And then my second question is escaping me at the moment. So answer that first question, and maybe it'll come back to me.
So it's kind of like, okay, what is it that we think we don't know that we need to know?
Mm-hmm.
You know, we have a lot of information about how gun violence occurs and the places and the people that are involved. And so I don't, you know, there's no such thing as too much information.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the trick with information is actually turning it into knowledge, which is, how do I apply that information to make a positive change? It's kind of like being reflective. How do I take the information about events and circumstances that have happened in my life, and what knowledge can I extract to make better choices?
Mm-hmm.
So I guess part of my question is, okay, what do you want to know? What is it that we need to know to affect a change that'll actually make a change?
I feel like you could have asked that question. I feel like that question could have been posed prior to seatbelts being made. Like, what are we wanting to know? Well, why are people dying? And I guess that's the question.
Yeah, we knew that there was a lot of impact injuries against metal dashboards and steering columns and stuff. And so, yeah, you know, so then the question was, okay, how do we help that? That's the devil in the details. It's not what do we know or don't know, it's how do we make a positive change? And so they said, oh, well, we can get these restraining devices that'll help prevent the occupant from striking these things. And we can get an airbag that makes a pillow. Mm-hmm. Right. So
I guess, let me cut you off there.
So here's a point I want to make.
Okay.
The things that I'm hearing about how we can change something that'll quote unquote make it better, I call bullshit. I think there's a lot of ways that we could say how not to do something, or how to do something that won't make a change. But I'm not hearing good, hard conversations about how are we really going to make this change.
What would you want to hear? What would you want to hear? Because I feel like when you're thinking about the two-party system, which I think is a fucking joke, but when you're looking at it like that, I feel like one side is like suggesting.
So two issues.
And then the other side just like, no.
So two issues. I'm going to go off on the deep end. Mm-hmm. And one is why is violence increasing? Why do certain groups appear to be so willing to become violent? Why when I drive around in the city and I see everybody's young at my point, young, aggressive drivers that appear to be just ready to fly off in a rage at the slightest perceived transgression.
Mm-hmm.
Why is that the steady state for so many people?
Mm-hmm.
This angst, and then willing to act on that angst. And so that's a cultural thing. And I think there's lots of conversation we could have about the contributing factors to that in society and upbringing and morals, values. And the other piece of it is, I've done a fair amount of reading, but essentially some of the guys that put together the Constitution and Bill of Rights and all that, they essentially said, unless your society is essentially honest and has strong moral character, they cannot live with this much freedom.
Mm-hmm.
And my sense of it is our society has declined to a point where most people can't live with the freedoms that they have, and they abuse them. It's not very pretty, and it's kind of a dark way to say, well, gee, this great experiment that they had in the United States is going to fail. But everything, all civilizations, all cultures come and go. So I see it as just somewhat of an inevitable. I'm just kind of saddened to see it potentially manifesting this way.
Yeah, I want to read you. It's very aligned with what you're saying. I had it pulled up, ready to go. I had something I read a while back, and it's applicable to everything we've been discussing. It's a Thomas Jefferson quote.
Okay.
I'm going to straight up read it. So it says, I am not an advocate for frequent changes in laws and constitutions, but laws and institutions must go in hand with the progress of the human mind.
Right.
That becomes more developed, more enlightened as new discoveries are made, new truths discovered, and manners and opinions change. With the change of circumstances, institutions must advance also to keep the pace with the times. We might as well require a man to wear still the coat which fitted him when a boy, as a civilized society, to remain ever under the regimen of their barbarous ancestors.
Mm-hmm.
Super applicable to what we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And I agree with you that I have theories about what's going on. I don't have statistics on the ready to pull up, but I think it's a combination of, I feel like we were speaking to people that don't have a set of circumstances to look at life through a more of a glass half full sense, because they're always trying to make ends meet. And I think that's becoming more and more prevalent in society for various reasons. I think there's a lot of single parent households, and I think there's a lot of things that are contributing to that. Income inequality, but Courtney, we could talk for 50 days about this, but I think what it's getting at is, I think the internet and technology is having a huge hand in all of this. And I think it's because, I mean, they have actual statistics about suicide and things increasing in teenagers, and it has to do with social media and comparison culture.
Yes. Yes.
But I think it's a lot of that. And then I think it's also, we're literally just not interacting with people person to person as much, and we don't have to. And there's this sense of like, people,
they're all layers of the same onion.
Right. And people can say and do whatever they want, because then they can just put their phone down, and then that's it. And then
you remember, there was kind of the saying, Johnny goes to school, but he doesn't get educated. Johnny goes to school and he doesn't learn how to think.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the problem isn't that Johnny can't think. The problem is that Johnny thinks feeling his thinking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so they misrepresent their feelings as thought and logic and rationalization or critical thinking.
Mm-hmm. They're different. Logic and feeling. Yeah.
But there's so much stuff that gets thrown out, as you say, on the internet and social media and stuff, and their feelings, and people react with feelings as opposed to considered thought, reflective thought, because most people aren't trained to use that.
Yeah, people can just jump to a FU and
that's right. As opposed to having a natural curiosity about, well, that's interesting. I mean, I may think it's the dumbest thing I've ever heard, but it's interesting.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah,
I think there's a lot of really complex things. I have no reservation about considering changes, and um, I encourage people. One of the things that I I was fascinated by, and I've done some research into, is the 20th century was really a horrific century. There were some things that happened socially that resulted in hundreds of millions of people being killed by their own governments.
Mhm.
And it's like, why? How did that happen?
Mhm.
You know, what can I do to be better prepared to resist being part of that,
Yeah.
you know?
And when I start having that kind of school train of thought, like I start to go to a dark headspace because then I just feel so powerless and like I just
Because
feel,
you're not.
huh?
You're you. You have control over your thoughts and behavior and
Mhm.
choices,
Yeah,
and you have the ability to potentially um, make things a little bit better between you and somebody else.
yeah. And I like that idea, like on a micro level, you have control of your thoughts and your actions, and then it can be reciprocated, and then it grows into something bigger. I like that concept, but I don't know. It on one day you ask me one day and I'll think that way, and then on another day I'll think like everything's meaningless, and it just depends on the day. It depends on the day for me.
I'm a pretty strong believer that you got to have your act together before you are going to be in a position to tell the rest of the world how to live.
Mhm. Yeah.
You know,
So
it's the
I want to we have
yeah.
15 minutes left, Courtney, and
Not enough.
there's a topic that I really want to cover with you.
Okay.
Um, I think it's an interesting topic, and I want to talk to you about it. But before I do it, I want to tie up this guns discussion.
Okay.
Uh, as you see it, do you think that? How do I ask it? What do I want to ask? Do you think? Do you identify that there's a problem? Number one, with I guess you would. What I was hearing from you is probably that you would say there's a violence problem, not a gun problem. But in terms of a violence problem or gun,
Guns are the tool of uh, choice because they can be accessible to people that one are already it's illegal for them to have them, but and they're small and powerful, and you know, they can do more damage than a knife. uh you know, and it's harder to hijack a plane and fly it into a building, you know.
Mhm.
So yeah, they are a means to apply violence in horribly indiscriminate or focused ways.
Mhm.
But it's that tool, and I think that, yeah, okay, so if they were all gone, how how would life manifest itself? Would people still be killed by other means, by other people? Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
probably so. I just
No, not probably.
yes, they
More
would be,
people
but
are
listen, evil has always existed, and people throughout history will continue in far beyond our years until the end of times. People will murder other people. Um, I just want to know from you, looking at what you're seeing happening in our society, do you think that anything at all should happen in terms of trying to remedy or change the behavior that we're seeing? And if so,
sure,
what do you think
sure.
should be?
Well, I don't know that I can give you a considered response off the top of my head.
Sure.
I have ideas,
Mhm.
and I have both thoughts and feelings about how you might make meaningful change. And I think that it's, you know, a lot of those ideas are not pretty, and they're going to be really tough discussions, and they are going to involve considering things and doing things that I don't know how you could go about doing. I mean, you can do anything. Anything can happen, but I would want to reserve that for another discussion, because the depth of it and the brutal honesty that's required is like you say, I don't sense that there's a lot of appetite for people to actually have those discussions or make those considerations.
I agree with you. And how about we agree to this? We'll put this out there, and then I'm assuming this is gonna get some good feedback. I think that this subcategory of our conversation has been super interesting. I think people would want to hear more. Maybe you can come back and we'll talk a little bit about it. You want to do that?
Absolutely.
Or
Absolutely.
if it's in this format, cool. If it's just like in your garage sipping on.
Yeah, I'll be interested to see if you get feedback from people that say, something other than the polarized ride on or go jump off a bridge.
Yeah, no,
if there's like, okay, well, what the hell do you think we can do then?
I think the majority of my audience is more like around my generation and stuff too. So I'll be interested to see. I'm just interested to see what people think about what we've talked about, and we'll have another conversation in the future in a podcast, or just me and you hanging out or something. We'll continue this conversation, but I want to get this last topic within our general time frame, and I'm just going to launch into it. So when I met you 3 years ago, I think you had just got divorced from your longtime wife.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir.
Okay, I'm not a man.
Well, yeah, I was thinking of my longtime wife. But yeah.
Yes. And the reason I bring that up, it's that's 3 years removed now, and you've since moved from Michigan and moved your life to closer to your sister, and you're living in Kansas now. And I know I've talked to you before about like now what's dating look like for you and what that's experience has been like. Can you speak a little bit about that to anybody that's listening and interested?
Well, dating, even when you're young, can be challenging. And as you get older, it basically just sucks. You have to, I believe, change what dating means and what you're looking to get out of it. So one, as you get older, when you're young, you have more social interactions, you're working, and you tend to think that it'll always be fairly easy to meet people and have acquaintances. And as you get older, you move towards more social isolation, so the old fart in the nursing home is the ultimate, all by themselves. So it becomes more challenging. And then you think about, okay, so how do I go about meeting people so that I might find somebody that I would be interested in making an acquaintance with, developing a friendship? Would it move to become romantic? So how do you do that? And basically, as both of my daughters have shared with me, online dating is very different when you're in your 20s and 30s than when you're on your 60s, but they're all equally horrible.
Yeah.
And when you're in your 60s, it's kind of like, well, there's a reason that these people are single.
Yeah.
And sometimes, you're widowed or there's lots of good reasons, but there's lots of baggage. And
so are you online dating, Courtney?
No,
you're not doing that. No,
I've looked around a lot, and I've actually had some dialogue, and I've done some phone calls, and I've met a few very nice people that were not who I was looking for to have a friendship or more. I have found that kind of the best. And I broke it down deliberately into acquaintances, friendship. Is there romance and attraction? I have found that as I've gotten older, it is unacceptable to have physical intimacy when there is not emotional intimacy.
Okay.
And so friends with benefits is not appealing to me anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, not necessarily that was, but it was, I certainly enjoyed that when I was younger, before I was married.
Mm-hmm.
And, Woody Allen once said, sex without love is meaningless, but as far as meaningless sex goes, it's pretty good.
Who said that?
So,
Woody Allen, you said?
Woody Allen.
Yeah, that's nice. Funny.
So, I have found that, I'm older and the road behind me is longer than the road that stretches out ahead, to quote John and Paul, not the Apostles, the Beatles. And I am unwilling to engage in superficial relationships for the sake of physical intimacy. Okay. And so unless I have found a mutual romance, bond, friendship, knowledge, where I can have that emotional intimacy, then the physical part of it just doesn't feel fulfilling.
Yeah, it sounds like you're at this point in your life, you're looking more for like the companionate. I think that's the word. Like it's more of a companionship than the I think the term is consummate love. Like you're more motivated to find somebody that you can like emotionally, intellectually, within your interests, vibe and mesh with. And if there's a physical component to it too, great. But you're not driven by the physical component anymore.
Here's the hard reality: is you have to be comfortable with yourself and your life and being alone without being lonely.
Mm-hmm.
And you harbor hopes and dreams in your heart that you never give up. But the reality is, as you get older, the likelihood that you will find somebody that they will become manifest and shared is not as great as it might have been. Maybe it's the same for your whole life, but it just seems like it's a little less likely now. And you can take more joy in meeting people and developing friendships and have warm, close, caring friendships with people that you're not going to be romantic with, that you don't want as a partner, but you can help each other and you can have fun and you can share company from time to time. And that's okay. So I go back to, you have to kind of rethink what dating is and what your objective is. And if you say, I want to date, I want to find my true love and the person that I'm perfectly compatible with, my soulmate, then it's like, all right, man, get ready to turn that handle, because you're going to put a lot of chaff through the grinder to get to the wheat. And it's exhausting. How much time and energy do you have to meet new people all the time and try and engage in a meaningful way so you can make those determinations? It just wears you out. So my thought of it is, boy, it was tough when I was young, and it's just brutal when I got old. And it's you're patient, you're caring, you're open, you hold hopes and dreams in your heart, and you recognize that maybe, if you're lucky, if it's meant to be, if you have good fortune, but it's kind of like looking for love. You can't look for love. The harder you look, the more elusive it is. So I've backed away completely from the idea of, I'm gonna have to kiss a lot of frogs, or whatever the term is. I'm not gonna do it.
I'm happy you mentioned the word open, because when I was hearing you talk, and you were very articulate in the way you were talking about that, I was thinking like it sounds like Courtney is open to the idea of meeting like a true love later in his life here, but
Of
also like
course,
yeah,
of
but you're
course.
also it sounds like you're also just kind of like, I'm recognizing that at least for you it feels as though that's less likely at this juncture, and you're open to like meeting people and like connecting on an emotional, conversational, intellectual level and spending time with people. And if things happen, cool. But if not, like you're content with just being open with like meeting people and like having meaningful relationships.
I'm not going to run around madly,
Mm-hmm.
meeting people and engaging in relationships, or trying to strike up an acquaintance with a bunch of strangers frantically in search of. No, that doesn't make sense to me. It's
Where
not
are you going?
meaningful.
Where are you meeting people?
Through friends,
Okay.
just through circumstance and being open to meeting people, and it's slow.
Mm-hmm.
So since I've been here, I've met a number of wonderful people that I have gotten to know, and I cherish their friendship, um, and that's where we are.
Mm-hmm. Just friends, you
And
mean? Like you just mean like you have a friendship?
yeah, yeah. I mean, you can't make your heart feel something it won't,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm okay with that. Whereas before I might have, felt differently, or the friends with benefits thing is okay, and love the one you're with, and blah blah blah.
Mm-hmm.
But I find myself I'm not so willing to do that, and I have hope, and um, I have reason to think that it may happen to me.
I hope it does for you. It sounds like that's what you did. Because I was gonna ask you the question, like, um, I think the way people think about life in their younger years, in their 20s, 30s, whatever you want to call it, everybody longs to find like a true love, a true partner that they can build their life with, have a family, or whatever their view of love and companionship is. And I think for at least, I mean, I'm not going to make you speak about your previous relationship, but the way I view it is like it sounds like you had that at least at a time. And I was wondering, like, one, is that true? And two, like, once you've experienced that, does it like lessen your desire to experience it again? Does that question make sense?
So okay, let's answer them in order.
Yeah.
Um, so the answer is yes, and um, you make choices, and even when people grow apart and they um, choose to not stay married, they can choose to go back to the friendship. And if you have children, you will always be parents of those children.
Mm-hmm.
And so you can choose to care for and respect and wish the best, sincerely, heartfelt, uh, want them to be happy and joyful because you loved them.
Yeah.
I mean, you still love them. You're just not maybe in love with them.
Sure.
Okay. And
Mm-hmm.
so having experienced that, does it make you want to uh, know that and live that less? Hell no.
Yeah.
No.
Okay.
Why would you ever not want to live that way and be able to have that closeness with another human being?
Well, the way I would think about, I mean, I hear what you're saying. Like for you, it seems like no question that's what I would want. But for me, it would just be like the way to answer your question, possible answers would be like the fear of pain of like going through like the end of a relationship again, or like uh, I don't know, there are a lot of like painful, I would just say painful things.
So we've touched on it.
Mhm.
One, fear profits no one.
Sure.
It does not. being concerned, being prudent, not making stupid mistakes or being reckless. Yeah, those are all good things. Being scared just because you're scared, no. Pain is a part of life. The baseline of life is really hard.
Mm-hmm.
And joy and love and tenderness and compassion make it all so much bearable. I mean, you can make life so much worse for yourself. You can take the baseline and go down.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the 7 layers of hell.
Mm-hmm.
These other things are, some of the things that make life the best.
Yeah. Well, I mean, given that particular topic, and throughout the whole interview, I appreciate your vulnerability and your willingness and openness to be candid. And um, I I just want to ask you here as we're kind of summing up the interview, is there anything that I did not bring up that you wished I would have, or anything that you wanted to air out or talk
Oh
about?
shit! I'll make a list.
Yeah. It's your typewriter.
There's so much more stuff we can talk about, Blake.
I think
Fun stuff.
I think that in the future I would. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry. I'm talking over you.
No. I'm just being exuberant about all the stuff we can talk about more.
I think I would like for you to come back. I plan on continuing to do this for at least a while. Maybe I'll be doing it until the day I die, and if people are listening, cool. If not, but I'd like for you to come back and we can talk about more.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, thanks for coming. Thanks for coming, Courtney. If anybody that's listening, thanks for listening. Remember, as always, that you can reach out to me. You can be on the podcast. Normal people talking about normal things, speaking about the usually unspoken. Courtney, thanks for coming on. Thanks for your time today.
It was fun. I had a ball. Thanks for asking me.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for listening, folks.